Experience the deep like never before. Secure your seats to legendary giveaway nights, weekend games, and other epic matchups when you grab a Kraken multi-game pack. Feel the roar of the crowd for every hit, every shot, and every save. Head to seattlekraken.com/ticket packs for more info.
Kraken Nation out there receiving this communication for another episode of Signals from the Deep. This is episode 19. We are the podcast tentacle of the Kraken Hockey Network. I am Piper Shaw, joined as always by our jovial producer, Grant Berry. Grant.
Jovial, I like that. How's everything going?
I'm doing well. At the time of recording this, we have just returned from the Kraken's first road trip, and I did not realize that Nashville was basically as far away as you could be, but still be in the central time zone. So Our flight was a 5-hour flight, and I crawled into bed at about 3 a.m.
So you're a little sleepy? Because you're not showing it.
I'm pushing through that, but sometimes that kind of veers into like delirium a bit. So hopefully we can keep things on track.
Get ready.
Hopefully we can keep things on track. With that being said, my co-host this week, we are graced with the enthusiastic and epic presence. You can hear his chuckle right there. The one and only Everett Fitzhugh.
Hey, what's up? Off the plane. Fresh off the plane. See, I got home at, I think I crawled into bed probably at about 2:50, 2:55, something like that. But then, like, I stayed up talking to my wife, and, you know, and 4 o'clock rolls around and I'm still up, and she's like, go to bed. I was like, okay.
So you spent all night talking.
Yeah.
And then went home and was like, I got to do some more talking.
Do more talking, yeah. I had to debrief what happened at home, man. I got a 2-year-old who's growing every day. And
that's fair.
She's got stories to regale and all that stuff. So, yeah.
It's also hard because it's like, for us broadcasters, we have to be on at night. We have to be our absolute best at night. And then we get on this plane for this 5-hour flight, and it's dark, and a lot of people, you know, get some sleep and relax, and then all of a sudden you land, and they turn all of the lights on, and you're walking outside on the tarmac in the rain, and it's cold, and it kind of just like wakes you back up, and then you're like, oh, now I need to shut off again, and then turn back on in 3 hours.
The annoying part is when you have those super long road trips, especially out east, and maybe it's a back-to-back, or it's a 2 and 3 or a 3 and 4, something like that, right? And you're on that long flight, so you've been gone forever. You just want to go home. You want to get in your own shower, your own bed, and you get through that first REM sleep cycle on the plane, and then you land, and then you're like, well, geez, okay.
So you almost shouldn't nap on the plane.
You should nap on the plane, yeah. I mean,
I normally don't, but I did last night. I was pretty...
Some guys on that trip, though, are expert nappers. Stuckey, our equipment guy, James Stuckey, he, like, before the plane even just out for the entire duration of the flight, and he pops up, what's up, guys? How we doing? It's like he looks like he got a full night's sleep in 2 hours.
That's how I fly, and it really annoys my wife because she cannot sleep on a plane. And before the doors are even closed, I'm asleep. Nice. It doesn't matter what time of the flight. It could be early in the morning, late at night. I'm asleep.
I will say, as much of a challenge Fitz and I are making it sound like it is for us, we're not even the professional athletes on the plane. You know what I mean? So it's like, I really cannot complain.
We work in the NHL. We don't play in the NHL.
Yes.
Very, very different. Yeah.
Yes.
True. Very true.
So Fitz, since we have you here, I thought we would take the opportunity to just talk quickly a little bit about you and your personal background. You know, you've been here since the beginning, but I think it's just kind of a nice refresher because our jobs are not to talk about us as they should not be. Yeah. But since, you know, we got this little platform, I thought we could just get to know the Voice Fits a little bit better. So just kind of like, where are you from?
Yeah.
What were some of your stops before you were here with the Great Seattle Kraken?
Yeah, so I was born at 2:06 in the morning on Friday, January 6th,
starting 1989. At the very beginning. Okay.
Checks out.
Yep. It was a little
built for early mornings
that morning. No. So I mean, I got my start back in college at the illustrious, the Harvard of Northwest Ohio, Bowling Green State University, the Falcons. Yes. I got my start there doing play-by-play and broadcasting. And growing up, I always knew that I wanted to work in sports. I never know what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to be Stuart Scott on the Sports Center desk. That's what I wanted to do. So you listen to some of these great play-by-play announcers that we've had through our lives. I thought they were all made in a lab somewhere. You don't go to school to be a play-by-play guy. So it was pretty much by accident. Everybody in this group that I joined, Bowling Green Radio Sports, they all wanted to do basketball and football. And at the time, this was the beginning of like the shock jock era, the Stephen A. Smith era, the cold pizza era, right? So everybody wanted to be, you know, a talk show host, or they wanted to do football or basketball. So nobody in this group, outside of a few of us, or even hockey fans. So I did my first hockey broadcast as a color analyst my freshman year. I just turned 18 years old. Selfishly, it was an opportunity to get more reps on the air, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with broadcasting. I fell in love with broadcasting hockey, the sport, and all of that. So I knew right then and there that my goal is shifted into being an NHL play-by-play guy. So I did a few years of color in school, my senior year of college, my 5th year in college, and then my first year out of school, so 3 years, I was play-by-play for Bowling Green. I got my first job out of college in Chicago at the USHL League office, so I worked there for a year and a half in Chicago. I went to Youngstown of the USHL to do broadcasting and PR and social media, all the other stuff that we have to do in this industry. And then my first job in pro hockey was in Cincinnati in the ECHL. So those of you not familiar with the hockey landscape, AA hockey. So you've got the Coachella Valley Firebirds or AAA, and then the Kansas City Mavericks are AA. I worked for Cincinnati in that same league that KC is in. So I was there for 5 years, 5 of the best years of my life. I gained such a really cool appreciation for the industry and for the job. And it's so much more than just broadcasting. It's not calling it, showing up, calling a game and going home. It's so much more. It's so much more detailed than that. So COVID hit. I got a random email from Tide Light Wiki that I thought was spam, and I didn't reply to him for a couple days. And then he emailed me again and was like, hey, I want to talk to you. And it was a really cool conversation. I had gotten furloughed from my job in Cincinnati, and I was actually, my wife and I, my fiance at the time, now my wife, she had gotten a job offer in Boston, and this was just at the very beginning of COVID. This was March of 2020. So I'm furloughed. I don't have a job. I was going to put hockey aside, and I was going to go to Boston with her. Well, then her job ends up getting put on hold for COVID. And then I get another email from Todd saying like, hey, I know the whole world's kind of gone upside down here, but we're still building for the future and want to know if you are still interested. So I was like, hey, Shell, I know you wanted Boston, but how about Seattle? I mean,
Other coast.
So began the interview process, and July 14th, which is the anniversary of when I asked my wife to be my girlfriend, I got a call from Katie Townsend saying that, hey, congratulations, we want to hire you. So, and here we are. Now,
and the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is Kraken hockey, baby.
The rest is Kraken hockey, baby. So yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind to get here. But I mean, this is my dream job. I have the job that I've wanted since I was a freshman in college, and now I get to live out my dream for an expansion team, and pretty cool place.
Very nice.
We're gonna transition into some hockey talk, some Kraken hockey talk. Finally, we have some real regular season games to sink our teeth into. So, Everett, without going into too much detail, what are just kind of your general impressions of some of the differences you've seen in this team as compared to last year or years past?
I think the number one thing that stands out is off the ice, and I think it's just the change of culture a bit. It's the fun, right? It's Dan Bylsma wanting you to enjoy coming to the rink every day. It's a different approach. And listen, that's not to say that Dave Hackstall's approach was bad, right? It was just different. And I feel that Dave Hackstall was a really good coach, but I think it can be fair to say he's a good coach. Maybe he wasn't the right coach for this time, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. And I think for Dan, when you bring in the intentionality of wanting to have fun and wanting to be jovial and smile. It's a long season, Piper. We're here from...
Don't I know it?
Right? Yeah, if you're lucky, you're here basically from September 15th through June 15th, if you're one of the lucky ones. But minimally mid-April, into the end of April, into May, it's a long season. This is a grind of a year. And to be able to have some of these loose moments already, to be able to have guys like Brandon Tanev and Jaden Schwartz and Jared McCann and Jordan Eberle who've been here start to see what Shane Wright and Ty Cartier and Joey Decord have experienced in Riker Evans in the American Hockey League, and now seeing those guys start to open up a little bit more to us and to be a little bit more outgoing with us has been very, very fun. So that's number one. And I think number two, on the ice, this team is going to play fast. They are a very pace-forward team. They're going to want to score goals. I mean, the last 3 years, this has been a 2-1, 3-2 hockey team. This team now, if the first 4 games are any indication, this is going to be a team that's going to have to win most of their games 4-3, 5-4, 6-4, 7-3, as we saw last night in Nashville. And as a broadcaster, I am perfectly fine with all of that.
Yeah. They've always been a team that wanted to leverage the depth and play with speed, but it seems like so far bringing some of that energy, like you said, some of that kind of culture shift, almost, it seems like it helps fuel that competitiveness a little bit more when you kind of have that gumption in the room.
It does. And Jared McCann, I thought, had a very interesting a comment about this last week. And I asked him, I said some of the big differences, and he goes, last season in particular, the highs were really high and the lows were so low. And again, in an 82-game, 6.5-month season, you can't have that. So I think everything's going to even keel. You celebrate your wins. You acknowledge your losses. You find ways to get better. But you're not, you're not hanging your head too low. You're not too depressed when you walk out of the rink every day. That's the goal. And I think we're already, again, 4 days in, 4.5 weeks in to camp and the season now. You're starting to see that mind shift, that mindset shift amongst everybody in the locker room.
Definitely. One of the things that I come back to all the time last year, I was walking by assistant coach Dave Lowry one time, and I was like, "Oh, how's it going?" He goes, "Piper, every day in the National Hockey League is a great day." And I think about that all the time. And he's not the first to say it, and he's not the last, but that kind of mindset has to also carry you when it's like, we all here, I mean, we are not athletes, but obviously.
We're local athletes.
We were around them a lot.
What a privilege, right? To be able to this be your life and this be the grind that you get to throw yourself into. My
very first job out of college, I was in an office setting. It's not for me, all right? I'm not an office guy. My color.
Yeah, I know. You don't even have a desk in the office.
No, listen, I come in, I talk to people, I distract them, then I go home. My color analyst, Al Kaniski, spent 30 years in corporate real estate. He is a businessman. And I tell him all the time, and I'm like, no offense, you had a really good corporate career. I'm not a corporate guy. And for me, my biggest thing I tell myself is I could be sitting in an office crunching spreadsheets all day from 9 to 5 and go to work, do my work, go home, come to work. You know what I mean? We could be doing other things rather than this. And you're right. It's such a privilege to be here and to do this every day. So why not enjoy it?
Yeah. Every day in the National Hockey League is a great day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we have some big news and notes from the last time that we recorded Signals from the Deep. So we definitely need to hit on this one. This is the question all of the fans have been waiting for a very long time.
A sounder or tone?
I'll see if I can edit one in. Yeah. We'll see if we can do pew, 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 pew,
pew, pew, pew, pew, pew. Breaking news.
We have a captain, ladies and gentlemen. Everett, I know that we are internal. People may assume that we are privy to information oftentimes that we are not necessarily privy to.
I found out when y'all did.
But that being said, Did naming Jordan Eberle captain of this team surprise you whatsoever?
It didn't, and I think he was the right choice for this role, because when I look at his career, he's been in every situation. He's been there. He's done it. He's experienced 1,000 games, playoff success. He's been on bad teams. He's been on good teams. He's had great players. He's had role players. He's had to thrive in every potential situation. And I think when you're looking up to someone for guidance and hey, what do we do here? You want to look down the bench and you want to say, that's the guy that hands down I can go to if I need help. And I think he's that guy. And that being said, that takes nothing away from Schwartz or Matty or Gord or Larson, who were named A's. But also, I look at Jared McCann. I look at
100%.
Vince Dunn. I look at players who have been around. They've won cups. Jamie Alexiak has been around this league. Just because you don't have a letter doesn't mean you're not a leader. And I think a lot of folks want to roll their eyes. But, I mean, this is really a locker room full of leaders. And I think to have a guy like Eberle leading leaders, I mean, that for me is going to pay off in the long run. And I think a lot of success we're going to see with this team will be because of those voices that we have. And now we've got that unified voice. I think Eberle was the right choice, and I'm not surprised at all.
Now, one thing I've noticed is Eberle's had, and we'll talk more about this later, but he's had a really good first few games.
Yeah. Leading by example.
Literally.
Literally, yeah.
Seriously.
Does being named captain have anything to do with that?
I think he always was that way. I really think he was always that way, but I do think that, you know, you got to walk the walk. If you're going to talk the talk,
100%.
then you have to walk the walk.
Right.
And now that there is that C on his chest, he's not one that I think feels pressure in any kind of like an unhealthy way. But I do think that he does have that mindset like, hey, if I'm going to wear this C on my chest, I wear it with pride, and I'm going to walk the walk. And we totally saw that in the Minnesota game, which we will get to in a bit.
Yes, we did.
I also wanted to say really quick, you were listing off all the leaders rather in her room. In one of the preseason games, Will Borgen was wearing an A on his sweater. I think it was in Calgary.
Okay.
And he was lining up to go out on the ice, and I was like, oh, Will, you got the A tonight, eh? And he just looks at me and goes, I guess. I just thought it was so funny because I also think, you know, you name so many other great guys like Jared McCann and Jamie Alexiak, but then it's like you even look at somebody like Will Borgen, who people know I love Will Borgen.
You and Will, y'all are boys. Y'all are tight.
I love Will. I love his family. I'm always on that train, but it's just like clearly there's even, you know, a desire to support somebody like that in a leadership role, which I think is awesome as well.
And even the new guys, even Stevenson and Montour, they've done such a good job. Yes, it wouldn't have surprised me. And again, Eberle did not surprise me one bit. I thought for you know what this team is, he should have been the captain. But I do think if they would have announced Brandon Montour as the captain, even though he's only been here for 15 minutes, like he has already had such a big impact on that room. I think the fan base is starting to see the type of person, let alone player, the type of person that he is. So, I mean, again, he's another guy you can throw in that list.
Yeah. I also circle back to in this conversation of Ebbs to that same conversation that we had with Jared McCann.
Yeah.
At practice last week, where I think it was you asked him about Jordan being named captain, and he was basically like, Jordan's been the captain of this team. Like, he maybe didn't have this team, but like he was the captain of this team. Like, so I don't know that a ton really changes other than just kind of the formality of it, which I also think is taken seriously by the room and also by Jordan.
Absolutely.
You know?
Right.
Speaking of another big part of this team, Joey Daccord,
the mayor,
5-year contract extension worth $25 million. What were your thoughts, Everett, on when this came out and kind of the implications of this and what this tells you?
This told me that Ron and the management have the faith that Joey Daccord can be a number one in this league. We saw it last year, and even though it was a very small sample size, 50 games. You know, he I felt was one of the main reasons why Seattle was at least in the playoff conversation up until the deadline. Yeah, they were 5-6 points out, and usually at that time that's a bit too tall of a mountain, but you're still running through the numbers. I remember looking at, okay, who do the Kraken have coming up? How many points do they have to take out of this next segment of games? You're still having those conversations in March with 20 games left, and I think it's because of the play of Joey Daccord largely that helped him get there. The personality obviously is something you really cannot overstate with him, but he's put the work in. I mean, we see it all the time. He works out before practice. He goes out to practice. He works out after practice. You know, this guy.
He's there early with his VR training headset.
Absolutely, and
which is very interesting.
Which is very interesting. Which I asked him about that one time, and it is very fascinating.
I sat with him on Media Day, and we talked about it at length. And Grubauer uses it a little bit as well, so that's for a future conversation. But he's very committed to his training. To your point,
he is, and I think that shows, right? And he's put the work in. I think he's earned this opportunity, and for me, I'm a big fan of the personal side of this game. We talk so much about these players essentially being commodities and you know, you trade them here, you whatever. But I look back to when Jared McCann signed his 5-year deal the first season. We're in Toronto, and he said, this is a huge weight off my shoulders now. I can buy a house. I can unpack my boxes. I can put roots down, and I can only focus on playing hockey. What's happened? Jared McCann's got 40 goals. He's got 29. He's been arguably
one of the most consistent guys. Absolutely.
Arguably your best offensive player in your team's history, right? I can see this deal for Joey Daccord having a similar effect. You reward the organization with, you know, who's been loyal to you. You now have no other goal but to play hockey, right? You don't have to worry about where your next deal is going to come from. Your wife, your girlfriend, whatever, your family, you can buy a house, you can set up roots, you can, you know, go find your favorite coffee shop. Just the small little things that we take for granted, now he can do, and he can only focus on playing hockey, which I think is so huge. I feel like this deal has the potential to be like the McCann deal. I think we're going to
the Vince Dunn deal,
exactly. I think we're going to be looking back in a few years, and it wouldn't surprise me if Joey has gotten in the Vezina conversation. It wouldn't surprise me if Joey's pushing 25, 30 wins, right? Because he only has to focus on playing hockey.
Totally agree. Grant, you have anything to add on the Joey Daccord front?
It's just so nice to see the growth from, you know, Coachella Valley and the success he had there, you know, transitioned perfectly up to the NHL level. Yeah. And I mean, we have a good problem in that we have two goalies that are, you know, you've got to choose who you want to put in that night. And that's a great problem to have for an NHL team that a lot of NHL teams do not have. They have one good goalie and an okay backup. Yep. So, I mean, it's just good all around. And with him being a late bloomer too, it's not really his fault, you know, but he's been able to overcome that. And a little bit less so. He's earned every opportunity he's gotten. But it's also nice just to see genuinely good people be rewarded.
Yeah. Like for working hard and staying a good person through that process.
He has always been the kindest, the most giving, such a sweetheart of a person. And I love it when good people are rewarded for their hard work, but also like, I feel like some of this, Joey, you're a great guy. So you know what? We want a great guy, a part of our organization. Yeah. I choose to believe that some of this deal was also because he's such a great guy too.
I also think it's part of, I mean, we've seen his star rise so much. I mean, you think about the Winter Classic with the shutout and how much media he really started kind of doing like nationally after that.
Oh, and he fell into it too. Oh,
he absolutely did. Well, he's a media darling as well. That's a separate conversation. But I think part of that is because of his approach as a human, to your point about him just being a good person and being super authentic. Like he's a big personality in a way, but it's not a faux personality. It's not an ego personality. It's just like, I'm just embracing who I am. And I also think that really also plays into the mental side of being a goaltender as well. You got to just, to a point, just embrace who you are and, you know,
and
separate conversation.
And he breaks the mold of the quote-unquote weird goalie. He breaks that mold, you know?
Yeah.
So
I'm sure he's weird.
He's weird in his own way.
We just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
Weird in his own ways. So We made a mention of this earlier, but during the Kraken's first game of the year against the St. Louis Blues, we saw a little bit of hockey history with Jessica Campbell becoming the first female coach behind an NHL bench in a regular season game. This is huge for women and girls to see somebody in this kind of position. I've been so impressed with just her poise in general. And it's just really great to see. I do think for some of us, in the organization, we've been able to talk to Jessica for several years now and see exactly why she earned this opportunity. So we just wanted to give her, a shout out there. It's big news nationally, but all of us internally here, we know why. We're not surprised to see this. Right. And I also wanted to say Allison Lucan wrote a great article on like a behind the scenes of Jessica's day. She had some teammates there and stuff like that. That is online on the Kraken's website. So definitely go read that. I know she was really proud of it, and it's a really lovely piece of content there. Do you have any additional thoughts on that, Fitz?
I mean, I'd only ever known Jessica from a distance before she got the job here, but I had the opportunity to go down to Coachella Valley during their final run, and just observing her passion for coaching, right? Mm-hmm. Like educating and teaching one-on-one with the guys, and Dan's the same way, right? They come from that same tree. They genuinely have a passion for coaching, and you see that up here in Seattle. It hasn't changed. And the way that she can communicate and relate to guys, and she wants to find what makes them tick and what makes them get better. I mean, the word that you used was earned. I mean, she earned every bit of this opportunity, but it's been so fun and so great to watch the relationships that she's been able to build with these players already. Again, we're a month into this season between camp and regular season, and to watch the relationship that she's built with these guys, and to watch how they respond to her, and to watch, again, her passion for teaching and coaching has been unbelievable to be a part of.
100%. And so many of the guys who have come up through the Coachella Valley, system up here, like Ty Cartier, when we first met him at the NHL level, he credited working with Jessica so much for improving his game and making him when he first came to Coachella Valley, he wasn't even playing in every game, and then to be an NHL everyday gamer now, 2 years later, it's certainly a testament to him and his talent and his incredible work ethic, but he also really credits the coaching staff there and working with that one-on-one time with Jessica.
And I'm looking forward to seeing like the Logan Morrisons, the Ryan Wintertons, the Yanni Newmans, these guys who are going to be coming up here. Even Riker, right? These guys who are on the way, who have played for Jessica over the last couple of years, now to see the baseline of development that she left them with down there, and then bringing that up to here to see how their game has grown. I'm looking forward to seeing that as well.
Well, and I think that's what makes this such a good hire. I mean, let's beyond the history and everything like that, we have seen the benefits of Coach Campbell's, work down in Coachella Valley with our young players. And now that more of those guys are coming up, I mean, it makes perfect sense for both Coach Bilesma and Coach Campbell to take that journey as well.
For sure. Moving into our next little news and notes here. We have maybe a little bit of a controversial topic that I don't know that we realized would stir the waters as much as it did.
Love the pun.
I don't know if stir the waters is exactly what I was going for,
I love it. No,
but
it's good.
It
was perfect.
We're sailing some rough seas here, perhaps.
You didn't know that stone throw would have so many ripples.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
There is a new item that the player of the game receives post-game after a win in the locker room. It is a WWE belt selected by Jordan Eberle, is what we were told by Coach Bilesma. Yep. We know that there's been a little bit of negative fan reaction because the Davy Jones hat was from the Pirates of the Caribbean, from Jerry Bruckheimer, very iconic. But we were talking about this, Everett, and I really liked the take that you had on this. So I was hoping you would share that.
I think the hat is unique, and you can certainly understand the frustrations, and see where, maybe if the fans are upset with. I mean, this is something that, was unique to us. How many teams embraced it, but I feel like when you're changing coaches, you're bringing in new players. I think it's now we're entering the new era, the next generation of Kraken hockey. And that's not to say that, you're getting away from your identity, but it's a bit of a refresh, right? We've had the Davy Jones hat for 3 years, right? So many great players have received that hat for playing well. And we've got so many great pictures and videos. And, it's actually been a nice trip down memory lane looking through Twitter and Instagram on all of the photos. But I think now you bring in the WWE belt. I think it provides you an opportunity to make some new memories. It provides you an opportunity to start a new tradition. And listen, this is a team-driven.
This was picked by your new captain.
By the new captain, right? So I think there's something to be said there about the guys in the room saying, you know what? This isn't a disrespect to the Davy Jones hat. This isn't a disrespect to the organization. This is just a, hey, you know what? We're changing so many things. New coaching staff, new culture, new way we play. New juju. You know what? Let's try something else. And as a wrestling fan myself, like I've always said, the day the Kraken win the cup, I would trade my ring for a wrestling belt. I would just my Stanley Cup championship wrestling belt.
I think you can buy this one if you really want.
I know, but I want a real one. I want Triple H to give me all the diamonds.
You got to earn it.
You got to earn it. Yeah, no, I'll do a cage match with someone if I can. Yeah, I'll do a bump off the top of the cage. But no, I do think that it's something that in time, we're going to create memories with it. And I think even though the Davy Jones hat was so cool and it was unique, I do think nothing wrong with a bit of a refresh. Nothing wrong with, new culture, new juju, like you said. Let's try something new.
And there's also something to be said about it being player-driven. This is something that if it's about them choosing who wins it and who gets it and kind of that little internal kudos, if that's what they want.
And if you look
Who am I to question?
You look around the league too, there's so many of these post-game traditions, right?
And a lot of them change
every year. Or a lot of them
all the time. Yeah.
All the time. Or you look at a team and you're like, what in the world is that? Like, why is your post-game thing a dryer sheet, right? Like, who knows? Who knows what the motivation is?
Suspiciously specific.
I don't know. It's the first thing I thought of. I have to do laundry. I've been gone for 5 days. My wife left the chore list.
Remember when I said we might veer into delirium just a bit?
I think we're getting there. Yeah,
we're getting there.
So Captain Eberle, how do you feel about maybe next year a dryer sheet?
Yeah, it's a box of Bounty.
I bet Stuckey could, equipment manager Stuckey could probably hook him up.
With how many superstitions exist in sports and especially the NHL, I am not surprised that this has changed over, and I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple years it's something else. Yeah. I will say, I've spent some time in the equipment room, and I know the hat is safe.
Oh yeah. It's still here. It's very much.
It's being cared for. It's put away. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see it at some point. Maybe not in the same capacity as like player of the game, but the hat is safe. Don't worry, folks.
And if I can say one more thing, this whole hat discussion that is now
whole hat versus belt.
Whole hat versus belt.
Can't believe we're talking so much about accessories.
It is exactly why I love this city. I love this fan base. Like growing up in Detroit, we were hockey town, right? The Red Wings won back-to-back cups. It didn't matter who you were, right? Everybody was rallying around this team. And I remember when the Kraken made the playoffs a couple years ago, I remember that same passion that I saw as a kid in the first playoff series. You now are growing fans. Our fans are paying attention. They're invested. We're no longer a fan base of casual fans. We now have the diehards. It used to be, I'm going to go to a Kraken game because it's the new thing. The rink is new, yada, yada, yada. But now it's like, I want to go see Matty Beniers. I want to go see Shane Wright. What's going on with this hat? Wait, why don't we have the hat anymore? Where's the belt?
They care.
They care. And honestly, I love it. I absolutely love it that our fans are noticing this and that they are starting to, not starting to, they have, but you're seeing this vested interest in this team in a place where they said NHL hockey could never work. And we're proving through this conversation and other things that hockey can work here, and people's give a you-know-what meter is very, very high, and that's awesome.
Very true. Any final thoughts on the controversial hat versus belt?
I'm just happy the hat is safe.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
I agree.
the belt it's a sharp looking accessory.
It's a sharp looking belt.
Yeah. It's good looking. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think, like, I totally understand why people are like, well, it was nice because the hat was, Kraken brand specific. But again, I think there's nothing wrong with just turning it over and also letting it be being something that's player driven and selected by your captain. And if that's what's going to motivate them to want to be the MVP of the game, hey, let's go.
And you know what? Maybe it'll drive belt sales, and we'll have a bunch of folks at Kraken games with WWE belts now.
Which you as a WWE fan would love, I'm sure.
I wouldn't be too fat. I wouldn't be too sad about that.
It's a bit of bias here.
I'm just saying.
I did get to attend a WWE event with Fitz and with JT and with one of our great videographers, Marcus Allen, who is also a huge WWE fan. And what a treat that was for me as somebody who's only ever really watched it on TV occasionally. I learned a lot. I saw a lot of passion.
12-year-old Everett was out in full force, let me tell you.
Yes.
I had never really watched wrestling growing up, but I attended the WWE event that was here to kind of see what happens behind the scenes, because I was like, as the IT guy here, I was like, well, what's it look like on the other side? Such an elaborate event.
Yeah, what a production.
There is so much that you don't see on TV that happens in there. I mean, I'm impressed.
I was also impressed. I had, as somebody who had only ever seen things of it on TV or on social media, the production, the in-arena experience of it, I wasn't quite anticipating. It was very fun.
Sports entertainment, right? They that rings true.
They got it down to a science.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
All right, so we're going to talk about now our actual first 4 games.
Yes.
There was so much to just kind of talk about at the beginning of the regular season and stuff, which is great. But we want to dig into these first 4 games, obviously the St. Louis game, but also the first road trip. So let's start with game 1. It was a 3-2 loss to the St. Louis Blues. What did you see initially, Everett, that you felt like was positive in game 1? Like just thinking that first game, and then what did you see that you were a little like, might need to work on that?
I thought that the pace and the tempo, right? I mean, we've talked so much about that. This is going to be a North and South team. We've seen Kraken teams in the past play that collapse, that tight defensive game, which, you know what? The old NFL adage, defense wins championships, right? But chicks dig the long ball, right? Everyone wants to see goals and offense. So, I do think the pace that this team is starting to play with and getting on the same page, that was the first thing that stuck out to me. And I remember, even though it was scoreless, I looked at Al and I was like, if this is how this team's going to play, like I am fully on board with everything. So that's what I noticed. They had the 2-0 lead. And then, there was that lapse.
Just a quick lapse.
And we've seen that before, right? How many times can we go back to previous coach Dave Hackstall's post-game press conference? And it was like, we played 55 of 60 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, we lost the game. Right. And I feel like that was another one of those things where like, hey, we have to clean up those lapses. And it takes 5 minutes. It takes 3 minutes for sometimes things to go a little wonky and sideways. So that was the first thing I noticed. But also, again, despite the result, far more positive in that first game than negative. I thought the way the team played, the way they came out, you could see it on the ice, you could see it on the bench. It just felt different the way they were playing.
I felt like the Minnesota game, the second game of the season, was almost the antidote of that, right? like that game was the opposite of maybe what we were used to previously, of the group just being able to dig in and respond. It was not always pretty. It was not always
chaos
easy.
Is what I called it. Yeah.
Right.
But there was a competitiveness of, look, we're not going to lose this game. There was that kind of mentality. You could feel it, I think, on the ice there. So let's talk about that game. 5-4 win. Ebbs gets the shootout winner. What did you think about that mentality there, and how critical was winning that game like that in the way that they did as the second game, kind of to setting the tone?
I think it was huge. I mean, you want to get your first one out of the way. You don't want things to spiral. I look at Nashville now, who's 0-3. Edmonton won their first game last night, needing overtime to get it done. But you don't want to spiral, right? And I think after the way that you played Friday on Tuesday in the opener, Saturday in Minnesota that was the bounce back, right? You needed a good response, and they got that. And the way that they played, again, it wasn't always pretty, but Jordan Eberle getting a pair of goals in that game. Guys were going to the net. You came back multiple times, 3 different third period lead changes, I think,
exactly,
right? In that game. That was a gritty, gutsy road win, right? It wasn't pretty. It wasn't, but it was exactly what the team needed. They had a great week of practice leading into that game, and they needed a win. But I think more importantly, they needed a win in that way,
exactly,
because it showed like, hey guys, we can win ugly games, and we can still get our point across. We can still play the way that we want to play. We can rebound and recover from deficits. The sky is not always falling. Back to McCann, right? The highs are high, but the lows, man, we're down 3-2. All right, we tied it up. We're down 4-3. The lows weren't that low, and you were able to bounce back. So to do it in that way, I think that win meant more than if it were like a 4-1,
exactly,
3-1, whatever.
And like the execution was not always perfect.
Yeah.
There was so much that obviously they take away from that game. They're like, we need to address this. We need to clean it up. But ultimately, all that matters is that you get that extra point, 2 points, and that they are able to find that confidence early. Like, hey, no matter what happens, we actually can win, even if we're not playing our best, which is part of the mental game of hockey. And I found that very encouraging.
It's what I like to call, and I think a lot of people would call it the same thing, a convincing win. It's a win that convinces you that these games are not a lost cause, that you can always kind of claw back, and it shows that your systems work, that the coaching is doing what it's supposed to, and that the players don't ever have to feel defeated in a game. That was a full 60-plus minute effort, and they did exactly what they needed to do and got the 2 points. Those are the games you look back to when you're like, oh man, we've had a couple games that we've lost. Like, what do we do? And you think back and you dig back to these kind of memories. So you're right. Needed win.
Remember that 9-8 game in LA a couple years ago?
Yeah.
How could you forget?
Again, it had the same feeling except with 10 more goals, right? Or I guess 8 more goals in that game.
That one was a little more chaotic.
A little bit more chaotic. Defense was a little bit more optional in that game.
Yeah.
Still, they found a way to get it done.
Yep.
Well, and we talked about in the beginning, Captain Jordan Eberle.
Yep. Big milestone for him.
Walking the walk, talking the talk. He called that one a character win. And I wanted to share this quick clip from his thoughts post-game.
Yeah, I mean, they come out, get 2 early, and we battled back. I think we battled. They got the lead 3 times. We came back all 3 times. So that's a character win. Those are the kind of wins that kind of propel season. So I know it's the first one, but that's a big one. Those are always the hardest ones to get. So, it's a quick league too. So you got to kind of turn our focus right away tomorrow.
All right, let's talk about the next game. Second night of the back-to-back. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we always get stuck with this back-to-back Fitz on the road where it's Minnesota, Dallas. I don't know if that's – I don't know for sure, but I think that's like the 3rd time that back-to-back has happened. It's a tough one because it's a long flight and you don't change time zones or anything. Right. And also those 2 teams historically have been challenging teams for the Kraken to play because they're just big and physical and they just play – a style of game. So
and they play 2 different styles of game too, right? You're getting one. Minnesota historically, they just grind you down to a nub and they beat you 3-2 and they lean on you all the time. And then you have to fly to Dallas the next day and you have to deal with Sagan and Ben and Robertson and Hintz, and they're going to put up 7 goals on you. And then you're like, well, geez.
But they're also physical and big.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was a 2-0 loss.
Yeah.
Just kind of your thoughts on that one. And in particular, I'm curious about, we felt like Grubauer played a very solid game, all things considered. But what were your thoughts on the effort that you saw there?
It was a slow start. I mean, and the first back-to-backs, in this league, and say what you want. Oh, you guys are on charter planes. You guys are, yes, but you're still, it's still not easy to be in the situation. So, that first back-to-back being that one, I thought was you're already starting behind the 8 ball. And you could tell the team, I don't even want to use the word tired, but they just got off to a very slow start. It wasn't what we saw in Minnesota. They had all the energy, all the momentum, and then it almost was kind of like all right, we got that one out of the way. And then Dallas, coming off of an emotional win in their home opener the night before, they had a big win, convincing 3-0 win. They really got after it in the first period. And I thought, all things considered, the first 5-10 minutes of that first wasn't that bad. They give up the first goal, the Kraken do. And then it was the 13 seconds later that I think.
I was going to say, I don't even think the whole game was really that bad. It was 14 seconds that they give up 2, but I really did think that they battled. It wasn't the same level maybe that we saw in the Minnesota game.
That's fair. But as the game went on, I thought, you look at the second period, probably up until the Nashville game, maybe the second period you could argue was one of their best periods of the season at that time. Then you go into the third period. Grubauer stops 2 massive breakaways to keep the game within reach. You have the power play where Jared McCann, I think, the wide open net, DeSmith was out.
And Maddie had a great chance.
Maddie had a great chance. I mean, you were getting chances, and it felt too little too late. And it was one of those games where if it was a 22-minute period or a 23-minute period, you have to imagine Seattle was going to break through, because I felt like at the end of that game, they were right there, but they just could not overcome that slow start to the hockey game.
Well, and Dallas is a great team.
And they're a great team.
That's a great
They're a
team.
great team.
That can't be understated.
That's the context for me. When you look at a team that's 4-0 right now, they have 5 goals against while scoring 12 on their own.
Yep.
Like, they're really good right now, and they're hot. And so for Seattle to only give up 2 goals in that situation in a game.
14 seconds also.
In 14 seconds, but also, you factor in coming directly from Minnesota. That's not a loss that bothers me. No. I think it's a loss that you almost like look at the schedule and go, that one. We might want to think about, this is going to be a loss.
And you'll never hear anyone admit this in the NHL, but there are coaches, players, teams do have what they call scheduled losses, right? Like, you look ahead and you're like, all right, these are games we should win. Given the situation, we're toss up, flip a coin, right?
Right.
There are and again, no one's going to ever admit this, but we can talk about it. I can talk about it. But there are those things called scheduled losses, which, as long as you play well, you know the situation going in, you have a feeling, right?
Yeah.
So,
I also I blame JT personally because he went on the pregame show and he said, he was talking about how hard this particular back-to-back is, Minnesota to Dallas, and he was sharing the player perspective. Well, and then he goes, well, and that's assuming that, you don't go to overtime. That's assuming you don't go to the shootout. He said that in the pregame show. And the second that he said that, I was like, why would you say that? Do not curse us by going to the shootout in the night before. And what happened? We went to overtime. We went to the shootout. At least we won, but that just delays us getting out even longer.
Right.
I just enjoy blaming JT for things.
I agree.
Right?
Why
it's
not?
just,
He's not here to defend
perfect
himself.
Scapegoat. No. Say, what's up, JT? Just walking in the door. No. His ears are burning.
We'll call those JT losses from now on. So,
All right, and then, of course, we got to talk about the last game of the road trip.
The touchdown.
The Nashville Predators. Heading into this one, Jaden Schwartz said, and Yanni Gord told me, they were like, we expect the Predators to be playing some desperate hockey because they had yet to win a game. As of recording this, they have still yet to win a game. And they made some moves in the offseason. I mean, nobody just brings in Steven Stamkos because for fun. You know what I mean? Like, clearly, like, they want to win. They have that desperation, that expectation. And they played a good hockey game for sure. They did not, they were not weak. They did not just lay down and give up by any means. So how does that make this win, scoring 7 goals, Larson hitting the empty net, of course, things we love to see. But how does that make this that much more kind of energizing for the group?
I think when you score that many goals, last year the Kraken through 4 games had 3 goals. Now they're up to 16. 17, something like that, around there. So you're already on a larger pace than you were from last season. But I also, all the things that you've been working on, right? You're trying to get the offense going. The way that Dan wants to play is that fast, pacey, North and South game. Well, you had that. Right? You had the back and forth that we saw in Minnesota. We had the bounce back. We had the dig in grittiness, but then you go in the third period and you capitalize on Nashville breakdowns and you get your 2-on-1s. I think I counted 5 2-on-1s. There was a 4-on-2.
The transition game was really sharp.
Phenomenal, right? So that's what stood out to me is the fact that they were able to enforce what they wanted to do seemingly at will. The Kraken have put up 7 goals in that building now twice, and in their 6 wins against Nashville, they've scored 31 goals. So for whatever reason, something about Nashville just seems to bring out the best in the Kraken. But you're right, like Nashville, they went for it this year, and they're trying to get, you add Stamkos and Marchessault, who were the man on their other team, you bring them now here to Nashville, where they have to, share the role with Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi, and they were, quote unquote, the man when they were here. So now they're trying to find what gels. Their window probably is 3-4 years. Same thing with Dallas. Dallas has been to 3 of the last 5 Western Conference Finals. They have to win a cup here soon because I don't know how much longer they can keep all of that core
they already lost
together.
Pavelski.
They already lost Pavelski, right? So, it's a desperate team, and I think the Kraken capitalized on that. Jaden Schwartz is right. He knew they were going to come out hard. They executed the game plan. Another 2-goal lead, which we're going to talk about those. Let's tighten up the play when you're up by 2. But ultimately, you score 7, right? It doesn't matter how you play. Your offense showed up in a big way that game. And I think that's going to be the number one thing. 4 games into the year, you scored 7 goals, and now can you carry that momentum coming back home for 5?
Right. It's almost convincing in another way. Yeah. Because you can say, we know we can score 7 goals now. And this is against a team that, they don't look great right now. But, I mean...
They're not an 0-3 team on paper.
On paper, exactly.
Yeah. They're a team that you would kind of say, all right, guys, we really need to think about things. We need to be disciplined during this game. But you saw the opposite in the sense that the Kraken were capitalizing on every little thing that Nashville did wrong. And that is exactly the mindset you should have going into a game like this, is find the mistakes, because that's the only way you're going to beat a team with Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault,
Well, and that is a lot of the times the difference, too, between a team that makes the playoffs and makes it through the playoffs and moves on through the playoffs, and a team that doesn't. Is every team, especially when you get later and later into the season, like every team in the National Hockey League is full of professional hockey players, the best at this sport in the world. So it's part of it is being able to find that leverage in those little pressure points and being able to deliver anytime that you can get those little mistakes.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the past, right? Last year, how many of the losses for the Kraken last season, we look back and it's like, man, one bad pinch here, one bad misplay there, bam, bam, back of your net, Kraken lose 3-2, right? It takes one or 2 mistakes, and a team of Stamkos and Marchessault or McDavid and Draisaitl.
That's a team that'll make you pay.
Robertson and Hintz, those types of teams.
Kaprizov,
yeah. Oh my goodness.
Name the whole roster.
Yeah, right.
I mean, every single team has at least 2 guys that can make you pay when you cough up a puck or make a mistake. Yeah.
So to answer your question, we have 14 goals. Which puts us in the top 10 of the league right now. We are tied with Pittsburgh, Boston, and New York each have 15. Calgary's obviously doing well with their 19. So, I mean, we're in good company. So, Utah, 16. They're doing well for a first-time team, if you want to call it that.
They're not a first-time team.
They're not a first-time team.
They're happy to be on solid footing. And I think, again, I go back to the Joey Daccord thing, right? Like, Arizona, now Utah, they know where their next, they know where they're going to be. They can now just go out and focus. The community is out to support them. I remember last season when we played Arizona, I left myself like, this is a good team. They had a 10-game skid and an 8-game skid. They lost 18 of 22 at one point. They should have been a playoff team, obviously, if not for those stretches. But this is a good Utah team. And now that they're on that stable footing, we're going to see what I thought we should have seen in Arizona for the last 3-4 years.
Well, unless you're sitting in the obstructed view seats.
Yes,
then you're
going to see 75% of what, yeah.
Okay, I want to get back to this Nashville game really quick. One of the things that Coach Bilesma and his staff have been very open about is that they're going to be trying different combinations all through the beginning of the season. We've seen a little bit of shuffling on the defense pairs, like in-game as well as when Vince was out for the Dallas game. Different kind of line combinations, but in Nashville, and this could change after, we're recording the day after this Nashville game, right? So we may see evolutions as you are listening to this. But Stevenson, Schwartz, and Bjorkstrand were put on a line. Very little time to work together or practice together much, and immediately connect for two. They looked very good. Just kind of your thoughts on what you saw from that trio just gelling right away.
I mean, that line's got a bit of everything, right? You've got hard work. You've got, a player in Schwartz who we saw, especially latter half of last year, going to the net more, front, driving the net more. You've got Bjorkstrand who can create. You've got Stevenson, one of the best two-way players, great skater, good puck handler as well. Plus Stevenson and Schwartz have that pre-existing relationship, from before they were here. But I consider these first couple weeks of the season like an extended training camp.
Yeah.
You're still tweaking and fiddling and things like that. I would love to see Dan keep this line together. I was very impressed how they played last night and just the way they were able to capitalize on the mistakes, number one. I go back to the Schwartz goal. I mean, he had me fooled. I thought he was going to give that puck across, and then, Saros' bit was frozen, and then he just popped it right in. So
I like the sound effects that you bring.
There you go.
It's good for podcasting.
What am I here for? If you're gonna...
So, I love the way that line played. But also too, it was so subtle. Like they didn't do anything too flashy, right? It wasn't. They didn't wow you. But
they went out and they executed,
and they did everything darn near perfect.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what stood out to me.
Ahead of that game, that was kind of the word of the day. I said it in our broadcast open, was everyone was just saying execution. Because that's kind of what was missing in Minnesota, right? Like they had the grit, they had the competitiveness. They were able to dig in, but it wasn't the best executed from like a tic-tac-toe kind of perspective.
Sure.
The Nashville game, you could tell that was the point of emphasis, was keeping it simple and executing. And it was nice to see that aspect of using that to help them win as well.
And I asked Dan about that, and everyone thinks execution is about scoring goals, right? Oh, you want to execute and score. Well, no, it's your breakouts.
Right.
It's your zone exits. It's your transition game. Executing those parts of your game so that you can be in a position to score and to put 7 up on the board, right? So, you can't, it's 95-5. You can't have the 5, which is scoring, without the 95, which is everything that leads up to it.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating to see a bad breakout, too. I think as I'm watching a game, a bad breakout annoys me more than anything else.
Yeah. You and my husband both, right? And Eddie. I feel like Eddie
has mentioned it,
Edzo on the broadcast. He's always watching the neutral zone, as he should, as he does. So with that being said, I also caught up with Jaden Schwartz after the game, and I just thought he had some really great comments about kind of what that win in Nashville can do for the confidence. And I liked his tone, because it wasn't about, as we discussed earlier, being too high when you win, even when you win big, or being too low when you lose. So I just wanted to share a moment from Jaden Schwartz.
I mean, that was a big win. Throughout this road trip, there's been momentum swings, and I thought we've done a pretty good job of staying with it. Having our pushes and, different guys stepping up, and, it's little things. I think it's like block shots, doing the right things with the puck, playing hard, in front of both nets. So we want to end this road trip, off on the right way, 2-1, and against some tough teams and some hard buildings to play in. So I thought we all did a good job tonight.
All right. Thank you, Jaden, very much. Very, very, very great insight from him. We're going to transition into our next segment, which is what I'm calling for now Community Compass. We wanted to share a little bit about some of the work that the Kraken organization is doing away from the hockey side of the game. There is so much more to our team, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, than just the hockey on the ice. That's, of course, the focus. But we had here at KCI a girls-only Try Hockey for Free event. This was the second weekend in October. So the Kraken hosted this annual girls-only Try Hockey Free event. It's in line with USA Hockey and IIHF's World Girls Hockey Weekend. 49 girls came here to try hockey for the first time. That's
amazing.
That's so awesome. Yeah. So we just wanted to shout that out. And then there is registration open for our next Try Hockey for Free event, which is co-ed, so anyone can go, and that is on November 2nd. So if you're listening to this, if you have a kiddo or someone in your life who wants to try hockey, come on down to KCI.
Go to KrakenCommunityIceplex.com. They'll have more info and ways for you to register as well.
Not surprising and definitely welcome and needed, but women, young girls are the fastest growing demographic in hockey as it relates to participation, as it relates to fan engagement and all of that. So
coaching.
Hey, Jess, shout out Jess Campbell. So yeah, I mean that's so amazing. That's awesome.
So another program that's awesome that is happening at KCI, which I learned has been happening in the past, but we just haven't promoted it a ton. So I just wanted to shine a little bit of light on it because I want to make sure that people know that this is something that is available to you. KCI offers a sensory skate. The next one is on October 20th, but just look out, like Grant mentioned earlier, on KCI's website. It's a pretty cool program. It's a skate that's targeted towards neurodiverse individuals. It features, limited attendance, some softened lighting, minimum noise level, so it's just a little bit less stimulating. One of the great things about hockey is that it's very stimulating, but sometimes it's a little overstimulating. It is loud and it's bright and it's cold and there's a lot happening. So this is a great opportunity if you are somebody or if you have someone in your life who's more sensitive to any of those things. It's a sensory skate. So I think that's really nice. So the registration for it, I was told, also costs a little bit less than a regular public skate. So next one is October 20th, but there are more as well. Right. Good stuff there. But Fitz, I just wanted to ask you, we talked a little bit about earlier, the accessibility of hockey and some of those things. Why do you think it's important for us to continue supporting programs like these? Well,
hockey wouldn't be for everyone if it's not truly for everyone, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, what limitations, whether they be neurologically or physically you have. I mean, we want as many people taking in this game as possible. And I think the sensory friendly aspects, it's an area that is never talked enough about. I remember when I was in Cincinnati and we did some research. We think we were the first pro team in North America to have a sensory-friendly game. We had no pregame music. We didn't use the goal horn. We kept the light on. We kept the PA was lowered. We had sensory bags, which you can get at Climate Pledge Arena for Kraken games. You can get sensory bags, fidget toys, headphones, cards that have feelings on them. So you can, anything that you need to help you get through an event, a concert, or a game, or whatever. And I learned so much. We worked with some specialists at Cincinnati Children's Hospital to talk about, ways that we could help and be more, aiding in that area. And I think to see it done here, it's so underrated and under thought about. But when you think about, just like you said, Piper, all the stuff, just noise.
It is lights. A very stimulating activity.
And even for me, right? Like we're for adults, like we're up in the press box. You're on ice level calling the games, but there are times when we go to break and I'm like, well, I got to sit down, because it can get a bit much. So
totally agree.
It's very important because I think as we continue as a sport to welcome and open our doors to as many people as we can, we need to make sure that we leave no stone unturned. Right. No matter how small that stone may be, how big that stone may be, right? If you want to be a part of this game, if you want to be a part of this community, you're welcome, you're needed, you are allowed, you deserve to be here. And it's up to us, not up to you, it's up to us to make sure that we make you feel as comfortable and as accepted as possible. And we talk about getting to that goal, right? The pinnacle, hockey being for everyone. And we genuinely, as an organization, mean everyone.
And I also think that's why like the Try Hockey for Free events are so awesome too, because I remember when I was a kid growing up, I had friends who played hockey and I had friends who couldn't afford to play hockey because it is a very expensive state. Even in the state of Minnesota, where ice time is not as much at a premium as it is in so many other places, it's still a very expensive sport, especially if you're just a kid who just wants to try it. Like, you know, if you don't necessarily, if you've never been on skates before, maybe, you know, you just want to try it. So I love that we are very proactive about creating those opportunities as well. And great that, you know, the girls only Try Hockey for Free one
awesome.
as well. It's nice to just kind of create a little bit more of a comfortable space to just dip your toe in, your toe in.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Hockey is for everyone, people. All right. Well, Fitz.
Yes, ma'am.
It was an absolute pleasure.
This was fun. This was
to
so
have
fun.
you.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have any final thoughts at all? Anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Ooh, anything I want to leave the audience with? You know, I think last year, going into the start of last season, we were on this high of making the playoffs and having, you know, house money, right? Like we made it. We were able to get there. We weren't expected. We defied all the doubters and whatever. I'm getting the same sense going into this season, but what's different is I think the commitment to wanting to get back there, the dedication and the change of that culture, and it's so fun. And you know, we've got 5 games coming up on a homestand. This year our schedule is kind of blocked off. Like we play 5 at home, 4 on the road, 4 at home, 3 on the road, 5 and 5. So, you know, we're going to be gone for a week at a time, and then we come home for 2 weeks, and like, come out, watch this team. It's going to be exciting. You and John and JT and Eddie and Allison and Ian, the Kraken Hockey Network, I mean, has gotten rave reviews. Radio side, we're up to 26 affiliates, you know, the 3rd largest radio affiliate network in the NHL already, and we're in year 4. So there's no excuse to not take in this team and to see this team and experience this team.
We're on the podcast? Come on, every 2 weeks?
Yes. So
2 weeks now,
like just, I mean, get out, come watch this team, come support this team, continue to follow this team. The belt, I promise you guys are going to fall in love with it. The hat is safe. Thanks for telling us that, Grant. And stay tuned for Dan Bilesma stories too, right? Like Dan is just a great personality, and it's so fun. Like the vibes are high, and I just feel so good a month into this season. You know, I'm excited. I'm just ready to continue this ride.
I totally agree. Everett, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be able to indulge in the energy that you bring. It's very enveloping. It's like a warm hug of energy. So
and
it's
I can
great
tell
to
you
have
what,
here.
anyone who knows me knows I'm not putting on this show for the microphone. Like once we shut this thing off, I'm going to be the exact same person I was right now. So
well, I thank you for keeping it to 1 episode's worth of talk this time.
Well, that's because Piper kept us on time.
She's got us on the schedule.
Me and Nikki O and you, we just like, time be damned. We just kept on going. So.
Right. I mean,
well, Grant has a doctor's appointment. He said that he's got a heart out. So
he's got a heart out in 45 minutes. So I'm just going to filibuster here. So I was born
lot to clean up after this.
Well,
thanks, guys.
Folks, I wanted to leave you all with a little Kraken story from over the summer. I've been sharing little nuggets on the broadcast here and there where we can squeeze them in. But when we did Media Day interviews in September, I asked Jared McCann about his wedding to his longtime girlfriend, Valerie, back in July in Toronto. Jordan Eberle was in the wedding party alongside former Kraken Ryan Donato as well.
R.I.P. I miss him.
Love him. Love him. Hope you're doing well out there,
Ryan. Hope you're doing well, Ryan.
And talking about Jared's big day with him led us to this little story about Andrei Burakovsky, who, funny enough, when I was sharing it on the broadcast, I described him as elusive but compassionate. And Brandon Montour was standing right next to me as I was delivering this report, but off camera. The second I was done talking, he's like, elusive but compassionate Andrei Burakovsky, because he didn't have the context because he hadn't heard the story. So he's like, what could you possibly be talking about? Well, this is the story of Andrei showing up to Jared's wedding, which apparently there was a big question mark. So enjoy this perspective from Jared, Jordan, and Andrei.
It was good. It was good. It was really good. Obviously, I had some guys from the team come, and Berkey made his way over from Sweden, we didn't expect him to show up, but he made it, and it was a good night for everybody.
Wait, did you actually not expect him to show up? Like, you really didn't know till the day of?
No,
we
thought he was going to bail or something like that last minute, but he made it. So kudos to him.
I know Jared said he wasn't sure if Berkey was going to show up to the wedding. Was there ever any doubt in your mind?
No, Berkey is one of the most compassionate teammates I've ever had, really. I mean, to come all the way from Sweden to go to a wedding is pretty impressive. So, he tends to, he's kind of the jokester in the locker room. He makes you laugh.
We had Jordan Eberle come in on Monday to do this, and he said that you were the most compassionate teammate that he has had, which we felt like that was really high praise. What does that mean to you to hear that?
Well, hearing it from a guy like Jordan, who's been around and such a veteran leader and a leader on this team, it's an honor.
And Jared told us that one of the highlights of his wedding was that you showed up. What was the story behind that? Did you have travel issues or?
No, I mean, it's just it's a long flight before we go to a wedding, but both me and my fiancée Johanna, we really like Jared and Val, and we felt like we want to be there and support their wedding and be a part of it.
Signals from the Deep is the official podcast of the Seattle Kraken and a proud part of the Kraken Hockey Network. Hosted by Piper Shaw and produced by me, Grant Beery. Music by Benny Drawbars. Have a question for us? Send an email to signals@seattlekraken.com or call the hotline at 206-279-7810. Your message could be featured on an upcoming episode. Pew, 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 pew. Pew, 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 pew.